I do truly believe that training and education is a very, very important part of providing great dementia care. But I don't think it ends there. And that's, I think, how you train people makes a big difference. Again, if you train people for hours on end, the retention level is very, very short.
Sure.
That's why these TED Talks are no more than 20 minutes long, because you really can't retain information past 20 minutes.
You're listening to Home Care Hindsight, the podcast where we talk with home care leaders about the big mistakes they've made and the even bigger lessons they've learned along the way. I'm David Knack, head of sales here at Zingage, and I've built a career on the idea that we learn a whole lot more from our mistakes than from our successes, which is great because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've gotten to know some of the leaders in this industry who've built amazing businesses and are super well respected. So I thought it'd be fun, instead of asking them about the great things they've accomplished, to have them tell the story of one of the biggest mistakes that they've made and how that mistake changed their thinking and the way they run their business. All right, we are back with another episode of Home Care Hindsight, brought to you by Zingage, the leading caregiver engagement platform. I am joined by a couple of guests this time. Andrew, Gary, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, David. Great to be here.
Well, for people who are not familiar with you, how would you introduce yourself? And Andrew, I'll kick it to you first.
I guess I'll start with I'm a father, a husband, and a social entrepreneur.
Great. And Gary?
So I am the CEO of All's Better. And really, my goal is to help senior care providers learn how to provide better dementia care and how to really stand out in this market by providing great dementia care.
Yeah. You guys are interesting because you're wearing more hats than even most home care providers I talk to, because in addition to running the home care business, which is home to stay, you guys are also running the dementia business, All's Better. And so I'd love for you guys to just kind of share a little bit about the story and kind of how all this came into being, because it's not every day I talk to people who are in the day-to-day of a home care business and also running a services business that, you know, reaches this market as well.
Sure. So I've been in the home care business since 1989. So I've been doing this for a really long time, going on 35 years now. And I had been in business for about 20 years, thought I knew what I was doing. I'd taken care of hundreds of people, done lots of intakes and so forth. And we, like everybody else, provided care for people living with dementia. And my attitude really was that those individuals, you have your challenging ones that maybe should go to a nursing home because it's just too hard for people to take care of, and then those that are more manageable. We had a case that came into us that was really a dream case. It was a sweet little old lady. She happened to live 4 houses down from where our office was located, so we could literally walk from our office to go visit her. And her daughter basically said, "My mom likes to shop, and I just want you to keep your staff or get your staff to keep my mom from shopping because she's spending money, she's beginning to hoard things, and I just want you to keep her from shopping." As an agency owner, this was a dream case because she was living with Alzheimer's, but she was still relatively healthy in a physical manner. And this case could go on for years. It was a 24/7 around-the-clock case. A lot of times you get those types of cases and it's a hospice case towards the end of life and it
Sure.
might last a week or two. This was potentially going to go for years, and it was a really nice family that we were working with. So we were really excited about this, and it came from a great referral source. One of our biggest referral sources had sent us this case. So we started the case. 2 weeks into it, we had gone through at least a dozen caregivers. My office staff was literally ready to quit because they were getting calls at 11 o'clock at night that the 11 to 7 person wasn't showing up. It was just a nightmare, and this sweet little old lady turned out to be a tiger when you tried to stop her. And when she got it in her mind that she was going out shopping, you were not going to stop her. So needless to say, the daughter, with all these no-shows and people quitting constantly, was not happy with our service. So she went to our referral source and told them what a bad job we had done. So this became a real problem with our agency, and I became determined to figure out, well, what could we have done better? And really what we could have done better is learn about dementia.
Sure.
And so I went out and I purchased, and I'm going to date myself here, but I went out and purchased a TIPA Snow DVD. I no longer even own a DVD player.
Sure.
So I couldn't watch it right now, even if I wanted to. But the DVD was great. Teepa Snow does a great job, and it was packed with information. But that's kind of part of the problem, is it was packed with so much information. I literally had to watch that DVD 5 times. And it was a real eye-opener where I said, oh my God, I had no idea that I didn't know anything about dementia. When a case came in, I would do an intake and say, hey, does your mom have memory problems? Does your mom wander? Does she get agitated? And that was really the extent of our dementia intake. And so after watching this, I realized it's a very complex situation here. There's a lot that you need to know. And unfortunately, the way this DVD was presented was it's too much in one sitting, and also it was really geared towards nursing homes and communities. And I really couldn't find anything that was meant for the home care market. So that's where All's Better was born, is that I soon realized that I wasn't the only one that was kind of clueless when it came to providing good dementia care, that doctors didn't know anything, managed care didn't know anything, and most of the home care agencies in the country also didn't really know what they were doing. So we set out to create a program for our own agency so that we could provide better dementia care, and that's when All's Better, we said, let's open this up to other people, and that's where Andrew came in.
Yeah, Andrew, I want to hear a little bit from you about kind of your journey into being really passionate about dementia care specifically, because plenty of agencies know it's important and do some work in that area, but the kind of partnership that you guys have developed is certainly a lot more embedded than, we think a little bit about dementia some of the time.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting story to pick up where Gary was doing that with his agency. And then probably shortly thereafter, being located here in South Jersey, there was an owners group of agencies that would get together once a month for breakfast. There was about 6 or 7 of us, and pretty good attendance at the group each month. And Gary and I, along with 4 or 5 others, were in that group. And Gary was talking about All's Better. He was kind of really starting to bake the program more. And he said, hey, Andrew, do you mind if I present this to you? I'm not trying to sell it to you.
Sure.
I just want to get your opinion as an agency owner. And I remember I said, hey, Gary, I'm the perfect person because I actually just bought a program. We invested $5,000 in this training and this program. So you're right, I'm not interested in buying it, but I went through this process, and I think I can give you good feedback. So Gary and I got together. He showed me the program, and I said, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's so, the breadth of it, the depth of it was so much more than the program that I had just invested in for our agency. And from that meeting at a restaurant in Cherry Hill, we decided to move forward. We decided to merge our agencies. So we merged our 2 agencies into one under the Home to Stay umbrella. And then that's when we formally created All's Better. And the plan was that I would run the home care operations and Gary would run All's Better, with some crossover between the 2.
Sure. So tell me a little bit about, because I think fast forward to today or even 5 or 10 years ago, it sounds like the way that you handled intakes and the development of the care plan and all the different facets of providing great dementia care have changed. Is there a particular kind of operational change or philosophical change that you've made in the intake process or in the care management process? Like, what's the tweak that you think went from we can't figure out how to prevent this client from shopping to actually, when we have dementia clients come in, we are really confident that we can provide an excellent level of care to them?
It's really multifaceted. And, one of the things that I've learned, and one of the things that separates us, people sometimes think we're a training program. I do truly believe that training and education is a very, very important part of providing great dementia care. But I don't think it ends there. And that's, I think, the differentiator. And I think that also how you train people makes a big difference. Again, if you train people for hours on end, the retention level is very, very short.
Sure.
That's why these TED Talks are no more than 20 minutes long, because you really can't retain information past 20 minutes. So if we're trying to train our caregivers that way, it's checking a box, but it's not really getting them trained, which is what we want. But like I said, it also goes beyond training, and I think you need to have activities, you need to have a dementia-specific assessment. You need all different pieces of this to make this thing work, because this is incredibly challenging and incredibly complex. And you need support. I wished I would have had somebody that I could have reached out to that said, hey, I don't know how to do this. And I didn't have anybody back then, but the people that work with us now do. And even today, I've been doing this for a long time. I've written a couple of books on caring for people with dementia in the home setting. And there are still many problems that come up, and I don't know how to manage that, but somebody else may have experienced and done this, so really this whole group effect. But I think, really it's a holistic approach, and without that holistic approach, you really can't provide great dementia care. And again, I think the training, the way you train your aides is really, really important.
I love, one of the things that really stands out to this for me is investing in this kind of way in your aides and in your caregivers to make sure that they're able to provide this great level of care has so many other kind of impacts on the business. I think from like a marketing perspective, from a reviews and word of mouth perspective. And so if I'm somebody who's thinking about like, gosh, it's a big undertaking to train all my staff in this type of care and change so many, you guys have made a complete overhaul of the way that you guys deliver this model of care. And so, share a little bit about some of the impacts that you see, to the business from a care perspective. What are the kinds of things that you hear from your referral sources, but also from the clients and their families?
Well, I think that one of the keys here is just what you said. Part of the problem is that, and this is, I guess, where Zingage would come in, is that agencies are sometimes afraid to invest in a lot of training with their caregivers up front, because the turnover rate is so high that we don't want to say, okay, I'm going to give you several hours of this training because now I'm investing in you, and somebody else is going to get that training because you're going to go work somewhere else. So obviously retention is really, really important.
Sure.
But the other thing that going back to that, overloading, you check a box if you do 5 hours worth of training, but you're not really learning. One of the things, and one of the mistakes that we made was that, two mistakes really. Andrew and I invested a lot of money in software, and we had created a dementia-specific assessment and a care plan and all these different pieces that we had, and it was really great. But the problem was we couldn't get it to integrate with the leading scheduling softwares that were out there.
Sure.
And people just weren't using it. And the other piece was that we were counting on each agency to have their own dementia expert that would be trained using our system, but their own champion.
Right.
And they did that, but once that champion quit, their whole dementia program fell apart. Yeah. So what we did is we had to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, if they're going to lose their people and we need to simplify, they don't want to train them up front, how can we still make this work? So we have something that we call actionable education now, and we think it's a really different approach where we identify where the families are struggling the most before we even start the case.
Sure.
And let's say the family says, my mom is wandering and my mom gets agitated. Well, I don't need to train my caregiver on how to get her to bathe.
Right.
It's not an issue here. So why do I want to overload her with all that training that maybe is going to be important on the next case she goes to, or maybe it's going to be important 3 months from now. But today, the case that she's going to, she just needs to know how to deal with that agitation and that wandering situation. So we single in on the key issues, and then we send out very specific training to our caregivers or the family members on those issues. So now in 10 minutes, they're trained on how to manage that specific problem, as opposed to 2 hours that they're going to forget most of this. And it's proven to be really, really effective. It's really a great way to educate your caregivers without it being challenging to get them to learn.
Yeah. Let me, a real world, if I could just jump in there to follow up on that. Another part of the All's Better system is a proprietary stress assessment. So that's how we're able to identify where those pain points for the family are. But, David, you working in, retention, I'm sure this will land well for you. But, real application is here we are, it's, an afternoon, it's almost 3 p.m. We can get a referral that comes in today that they need to start care tonight. and it could be someone living with dementia. They could be maybe have some aggression and use hateful, mean language. And we have to send a caregiver in on an overnight shift to provide care.
Sure.
So being able to skill that caregiver up with this actionable education by watching a couple 3 to 7 minute videos is going to put that caregiver into such a much stronger position. And I know we talk about the clients and, obviously the caregivers, but that caregiver that's going into that environment, it's nighttime, she could be scared, and she needs that shift, as we all need, our shifts and to work. And if she can't be successful, maybe she's not having money for her son to go to a class trip the next day. So making sure that caregiver has all the tools to be successful, that's one of the great benefits of the All's Better platform.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions is, Andrew, especially as you're kind of managing the day-to-day operations of the home care agency, what is it that you're hearing about how caregivers are responding to this level of, and this is kind of the thing that I hear frequently is, I'll hear from agency owners, our caregivers will say that they're interested in more training. And then when you make that training available to them, and it may be in the form of these kind of long form engagements, they don't do that training. And so what's been kind of the story that you've seen as you've implemented these types of resources that seem very relevant and timely from caregivers and the ability to equip them to serve clients well?
Yeah, confidence and being actionable, I think, is the key there.
Yeah.
So it's actionable and it's interesting. The training, it's not, it's something that they want to watch, they can learn from. And it amazes me because on some of those actionable videos that we have, it can be 1 minute and 47 seconds, and they're able to learn new skills and apply them immediately. Again, in a little bit over 90 seconds, they can learn something new and apply it that day in the field. And that you know what that is? That's power.
Yeah.
That's confidence.
One of the things that I think about a lot is, and this is a really challenging thing to do in home care, but if your agency can do it well, it's such an impactful cultural marker and retention tool and all that is to create a career path for caregivers. And, there's always the licensed pathway where people can go like CNA, LPN, RN, et cetera. Not many people take that, but it's of course, an option. Sometimes people can get promoted into office roles. But one of the things that I love about the level of service that's required with dementia care is those are longer shifts that provide more hours to caregivers. And so instead of getting 2, 3, 4 hours here and there, they're able to get, these overnight shifts that are 8 or 10 or 12 hours. And so it's a great way to be able to provide a full schedule to somebody who's often having to cobble stuff together from a couple of different places.
Right.
I think that's great. Our average case is 76 hours when it comes to dementia, which means there's a whole lot of hours for these people. So that's really a great point. So I think that the other thing is that we also upsell this because of all of the pieces of our program that we're offering. We're able to charge a bit of a premium for that. And with that premium, we're able to hire a dementia coach, but we're also able to pay our caregivers more money. So obviously pay is not everything when it comes to retention, but it's certainly important.
Sure.
And recruiting. So because we can pay the caregivers better and we can incorporate a coach into what they're doing, that coach gives them that confidence and makes sure when they're out on that difficult case, they have somebody to lean on, and it really works well.
Just wanted to point out that, great dementia care and that training that they're getting, it transcends the dementia client, if you will. Great dementia care is great care for someone that's maybe very sick, in pain. It's improving those listening, those communication skills. So again, it's really overarching and transcends just the dementia client.
Oh, interesting. So if I'm understanding you, do this dementia training and certification so that you can serve your dementia and Alzheimer's clients well, but also you're seeing a lot of kind of cross-training that this same type of education applies really well to other types of high need, high acuity types of clients.
Exactly. Yep.
Very good. Yeah, that makes sense because, the things that we hear about are there's subtle lead indicators that something with a chronic condition is going poorly, with numbers of times that they get up during the night to go to the bathroom, as an example. And I think that kind of laser focus on some very subtle cues from a dementia client would translate to other types of chronic conditions that, if not managed well, can end in, hospitalization and all other kinds of bad outcomes.
Yeah, agree.
Okay. Well, let's transition to talking about something that's overrated in the industry. And so, Andrew, you had something that's a little controversial, but that's what the show is for, that you think is overrated in the industry.
I would say in today's landscape of the home care, I feel that consultants are ubiquitous and overrated. I think that it seems that every time I turn around, there's a new consultant, and I think that they could be overrated at times. Okay.
And I've had consultants on the show. Some of my best friends are consultants. And so you're going to have to sell me on this a little bit. Tell me a little bit about what are some of the markers to you that somebody's working with a consultant that's not actually helping move their business forward?
I would say looking at the background, just because someone may be, like a salesperson is now a consultant because there's so much more to sales. Someone that, just because you've owned an agency, I don't think that makes you qualified to be a consultant. And I think that what individuals need to do is really trust themselves more, listen to their voice, listen to their experiences. There's a lot of commonality in home care, but to a degree, it's so dependent. There's a lot of geographical differences, licensure differences. So there's so many nuances. And I think that people are afraid to trust themselves. And my thought is, if you're looking for that consultant, maybe look for someone outside the industry, coming from another area, and applying those skills and traits.
I remember I was talking to this guy a number of years ago, and he was a realtor, and his kind of stated goal was to leverage the real estate business and his work in that area to build this portfolio of rental properties so that this would create this base of equity that he could do all kinds of stuff with. And so I knew just a little bit about real estate investing at the time. And I said, do you listen to any of those podcasts like Bigger Pockets and that kind of thing? And as someone who makes a podcast that I hope people listen to, this is probably not good press for me, but here we go. And he said, you know what? I listened to those a little bit, but I kind of learned everything that I need to. And now I just have to do the thing. And I was like, oh, yeah, there can be kind of this glut of knowledge of continuing to take in information and deliberate and kind of collect your, bookcase full of resources. And at some point, we've got to stop trying to take in knowledge and just kind of do the damn thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. It reminds me of a quote, and I'll paraphrase here by, I think it was Calvin Coolidge, about persistence and determination. And just how that will trump talent, it will trump genius, and it will trump education. And just being persistent and keep moving forward.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. Gary, anything to add there?
I would say that underrated is agencies not trying to stand out and separate themselves. That everybody feels that there's such a huge market out here that they can just do what everybody else does, but the reality is there's 30,000 or so private duty home care agencies, and so many of them, they're interchangeable. You can't tell the difference between one or another, and simply saying we care doesn't really make you different. And I think that they lose their creativity, or they never even try and apply any creativity. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for creativity out there, and that agencies should really, value themselves as individuals and what they can bring in, and being creative and doing something that helps them stand out in this market, because I just think it's underrated that you need to do that.
It's spoken like somebody from New Jersey, which all indications is one of the most saturated and competitive home care markets in the U.S.
Yeah, no, when I started this, back in 1989, there was 6 agencies in all of South Jersey.
Sure.
And there's probably several hundred now at this point. So it's absolutely that way.
Yeah. Well, let's transition and we talked about a big mistake that you guys made, namely thinking that dementia was simple and easy to solve for and always looked exactly the same. But I want to talk now about a little mistake that you see home care owners make all the time. And if they quit, it'd make their lives or their businesses 10 times better.
I would say trying to do too much, and I remember when I came into the industry, would live and die on every shift, and the phone was always in my hand, and it was so stressful. And, come to the realization that, really just trying your best and not using that as a cop-out and mailing it in, but truly, truly trying your best. And if you could do that, being satisfied with that and realizing that you're not going to be able to be everywhere for everybody, but just really try your best.
Yeah, I think that delegation thing, that work-life balance thing is so important. And it seems like the first couple of years, you're in it just kind of trying to survive in the business a little bit. But as it continues to grow, I think one of the things I'm hearing you say is like, you've got to make peace with the fact that it's kind of a batting averages game of you are not going to bat 1,000. You're not going to get every single shift coverage. You're not going to be able to put out every single fire as quickly as you'd like. And so what was like the time that you realized like, okay, I have been putting too much stock or too much reliance, too much of myself into being perfect in this. And we've got to figure out how to redefine the relationship with the work and the business and all that.
Yeah, I remember it was in August. I was at the Salem County Fair. My phone was with my family, my young children, but I was focused on my phone, because I was doing everything at the time. And I was waiting to hear back from a living caregiver because we needed to start a shift at 7, 8 o'clock that next morning that the family, was really counting on us. And, was walking and stumbled into, a health booth and had my phone and waiting for a call and getting my blood pressure checked. And saw how high my blood pressure was. That was high enough that I was at the doctor's office that following Monday, and said, "This isn't sustainable."
Yeah, I think a very real example of this business can kill you if you let it.
Right. Exactly.
One thing we talked about kind of in the prep call, and that didn't come up during the course of the show, but you've got kind of a daily meditative practice that you've made a part of your life. And so that feels like this connects with this part of the show a little bit. So tell me a little bit about that kind of meditation yoga practice and how it's impacted your life.
Yeah, it's been an outgrowth of that. You're exactly right. Just the stress of being in home care, having at the time, a very young family, being pulled in a lot of directions. I knew something had to change and started a daily practice. And when I say started a daily practice, I started with 1 minute a day and build up from there.
Yeah.
And it's just really helped center me and just really helped me keep things in perspective and really helps giving me peace and equanimity.
Yeah. Gary, tell me a little bit about how you think about, like, you conceptualize your relationship with, obviously you've poured your heart and soul into this thing, and a huge part of your life has been devoted to not just the home care business, but also the dementia care business. And so, how do you think about, yourself over and against the business and kind of creating some healthy space between the two?
I agree with what Andrew said. I think that you really need to be able to try and build a team and have that team do things for you. I try and get in the office early, but then when I leave, I try not to work too much from home. I really try and make it a point that, I'm not that I don't answer my phone, but I'm not looking at my phone constantly. I'm not checking emails, and I'm really trying not to do much work once I leave home. On the weekends, I try and do activities, whether it's with my family or just, playing golf, riding my bike, being outside with the dog or doing yard work or whatever, but anything other than working. I do find in the wintertime I work more just because I can't be outside as much,
Sure.
so I do a little bit more on the weekends, but I really do think you need to separate yourself from your work. You can't be 24/7. This business is 24/7, so you literally could work 24/7 if you so desired. So you need to let it go, and you need to just live your life without business and have a team that you trust is going to take your own call, is going to handle it okay. And when you get into the office on Monday, you'll pick up again.
Yeah. That's something that I think about a lot. Obviously, I'm not in a home care business, but in the startup world, there's always more stuff that could be done. There's always gaps in the business that somebody's got to fill in. And one of the things that I've really tried to focus on this year is to build in that kind of sense of presence of when I'm at work, but when I am not at work, I'm able to put that stuff on pause and be present with my family and my friends and, doing all the kinds of stuff that help me to show up at work, but show up for the people in my life, like, exercise and eating good food and all that kind of stuff. So appreciate you guys taking a detour into the kind of mental health piece of this, because it is so, so important. Bears repeating, this business will kill you if you let it. But there's also folks who figured out how to ride the highs and lows and create some critical distance between themselves and their identity and what the business is for themselves and the community and all that. Awesome. Let's move into a section. We talked about a lot of mistakes, but I want to hear about something that's gone well in the business that you're really proud of lately.
I'll jump on that first if it's okay, but I'm really pleased with at Home to Stay working, with our COO. We hired a dementia coach for our agency. And the idea was to really, in addition to the training, but to really work with those families. We really don't have a salesperson, and we have that dementia coach. And the idea is that the great care that we're providing will be our salesperson. And we're really starting to see that take root and pay dividends.
Okay. I love this, but tell me what a dementia coach does, because I would have expected this to be very caregiver oriented kind of role. But what I'm hearing you say is that this is like an additional level of service that you're providing to not just the client, but to their family.
Okay, so the coach will sits in, David, the coach sits in between, works directly with the client, the family. As we know, dementia is a family disease, right? So it's one of, you really need caregivers. I think according to the Alzheimer's Association, someone in late to the middle parts of living with Alzheimer's, they need on average 4 caregivers. So 168 hours in the week. So that coach works with the home to stay caregiver. And maybe, as Gary said, they're doing 70 hours a week. Well, that still leaves a lot of hours that other family members are covering. So that coach is working with the caregiver, working with the family, getting everyone trained and skilled up, doing dementia-specific assessments. So we're learning as much as we can about the individual to educate our caregiver. And then, it's home care, right? So a caregiver calls out, or a caregiver is out, decides to move to Florida with no notice, and we have to put in another caregiver, where that coach is able to step right in and has that intrinsic knowledge. It's not all left with the caregiver or the scheduler, and make that actionable.
I think that another piece that is really important that the coach does is a big part of our program is focusing on building a meaningful day for the person living with dementia. And so often we assume, this person can't do this or that anymore. Let's put them in a corner. Let's put them in front of the TV and just, they'll veg out. And for the caregiver, this is so easy. I can just let them, they'll sleep, they'll watch TV. But what we really believe in is that no matter what stage they're at in their journey, that there's still somebody there, and that person deserves respect, and that person deserves meaning. And when you take that meaning out of their life, that's when you start to see all of these issues that arise, and they get agitated, they get bored, they get lonely, they get whatever. Part of the problem is they can't communicate this, so now we think that they're having all of these expressions that we can't manage. So what our coach does, we do a really detailed assessment on their lifestyle, what they like to do, did like to do, all this kind of stuff. And then the coach builds what we call a meaningful day filled with those activities. And then what his or her role is to get the family, but really our care partners, are the people from our agency that are out there doing this work, to get this person engaged. So we started a case just recently, and this person played piano in Atlantic City, on the stage. They have a piano sitting in their home that hasn't been touched in years. Well, we got that. Part of it is you have to teach the caregivers, the care partners, how to get somebody engaged. And we're actually doing a webinar on that next month, teaching them how to do that kind of thing. It's a free webinar to everybody, to the general public. But getting them engaged. So now this individual is playing piano again, and they love it. They don't play at the level that they used to, but they don't have to. So finding what's meaningful to those individuals, and then that coach helping the people that we're employing to basically make that program work. to execute on that. And that's a really big part of what they're doing. And when you do that, you start to see a lot less behaviors. And again, getting back to retention, if you take that caregiver and you put her in a job that she's doing something fun, like playing a piano with somebody or going for a walk, as opposed to fighting with somebody, and it makes that job much more enjoyable. It gives meaning to that job. And that's part of now how you get people to stay at their job.
We keep track of some of the answers from caregivers who use the Zingage platform, and some of the best responses we get to, tell us about a time where you felt like your work was really meaningful, are those times that surprise me as someone who's not in the day-to-day of home care. So for example, there was a question, what's the last time that you really connected with your client? And she said, my client made my favorite pie from scratch, lemon meringue. We sat outside, we ate it. And I think it's one of those, like, the thing that makes being a caregiver and doing the work of home care so meaningful is when you get to recapture for people the things that they love to do and you get to share that with them.
Yep.
And I think especially as you think about awakening the person inside of the dementia patient, opening up those doors and kind of recapturing, the person that is in there and has been in there, but isn't always evident to everybody, from the outside. And so I love that you guys are finding ways to make that meaningful day.
Yeah, I mean, it is still there. And to me, that's what we're about. How do you make the lives of these individuals meaningful? Dementia, no matter what type of dementia, it's challenging. Nobody wants it. In fact, it's the single most feared thing that a senior thinks about is coming down, getting dementia. But there's still so much more we can do. That's why we use the term care partner, is we want the people that are out there to kind of be a partner, to enjoy providing this care and to gain something from that person that's living with dementia, because these people have been on this earth for 60, 70, 80, 90 years. They have a lot to give.
Yeah.
And what can we learn from that? And if we kind of teach our staff, hey, you can learn, you can enjoy, it becomes really meaningful to them to do these activities. And now when you get that meaning, that's hopefully why they're in this line of work.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay. Before we get out of here today, what do you guys want to plug?
Yeah. All's Better. It's spelled ALZ as in Alzheimer's, better, BETTER. Allsbetter.com is our website. And really our goal is to help the home care agencies provide great dementia care. It's really a turnkey program for these agencies to be able to stand out, to provide great care, and to be the leader in their individual market in what they're doing. And we've got an AI part of this that is like nothing else that's out there, and a whole app, and just we walk them through it, and we'd be happy to tell the agency owners about what we're doing, because we're having really great success with the people using our program.
And just wanted to add, in addition to everything that Gary said, it's also a great lead generator because it resonates with individuals, with referral sources, and it really helps drive business as well as improve care.
Yeah, that's great. Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, David. Have a great day.
You're doing a great job. Appreciate it.
On behalf of the team here at Zingage, thanks for listening to the show. We'll be back next week with another episode, so be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. Leave us a rating while you're there. It helps other people find the show. If you have comments on the show, drop me a line, david@zingage.com. Would love to hear from you, chat with you there.